Welcome in another edition of the OG Podcast. I'm ND Kalu. Sitting across from me, one of the best to ever tote the rock in the NFL, and I'm not just saying that because he's kind enough to join us. It's the truth. Check the stats, check the highlight tapes, and you'll know that Ahman Green, one of the best to do it. We were lucky enough to have him here in Houston, spent some time in Seattle, and really made a name for himself. You know what? In Green Bay, but I'll say you really made a name for yourself in Nebraska because that's when a lot of us heard, about the myth, the legend of Ahman Green. And then obviously you were drafted to Seattle, balled out of control in Green Bay, and spent some time here in H-Town. And I'm just finding out this is home now.
Yeah. Me and my wife just moved back because we liked the weather, we liked the city, and we found that that was something later on in life that we want. We want warm weather. We want a nice city to be in. All our kids are grown now. We're empty nesters. We have two big English masters, Apollo and Ace, and it's just us. So I was like, probably like 3 years ago in Green Bay, we were still living. I said to my wife, you got to pick a place because the plan was when the kids graduated high school, we were going to move out of Wisconsin. We're going to either go to Nebraska or somewhere down here, Texas, Florida, California, somewhere warm. That didn't happen. Kids graduate college. Didn't happen. So I'm like, all right, I got to push the envelope here. And so I said, all right, this is what we're going to do. Here's the game plan. I said, it was just 2021. I said, all right, we're going to I travel a lot. I go to events. I go to tournaments and stuff like that for what I'm doing now. And come with me. Some of these tournaments are in Cali. They're in Texas. They're in Florida. And we're visiting Florida. We got friends and family down there. And then put your mind at where you're living, that we could live here. Picture that. And then sure enough, we did that for about a year. And then she's like, all right, I got it. I was like, where? And my two picks were here or Florida.
Okay.
So I was either Houston or Florida.
What part of Florida? Any part?
Orlando.
Okay.
Orlando. I said really any part.
Okay.
But Orlando, my godson, and we got family up there too. I said, all right, I'm good with. I said, I'm Florida or Texas, Houston, Orlando area. She said Houston. I said, boom, bingo, let's get it. And so we start looking for property and all that. We have friends down in the neighborhood. We're in Veranda, which is Richmond, not far from Sugar Land, and a lot of guys are down there. I just saw Jonathan Wells and a few other guys we had at the minicap practice, and a lot of guys were down there by me. Or I'm by them because they've been there longer. So, yeah, that's where we're at. But I fly back and forth between here and Nebraska for my job that we could talk about here. I'm the director of esports there, running that program, getting it off the ground in terms of getting a facility. We have a ton of players. That's not a problem. The problem is we don't have no football field, basically. We don't have a place to practice in to get our skills tight and teamwork built that and for me to do my job with that aspect.
Okay, there's going to be some 50, 60-year-olds listening to this, and you kind of just brushed over it. You're the director of the esports. Can you – and I know for you it's an everyday thing. Yeah. For most of us, we know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah. But it's a pretty new concept when we start talking about universities and scholarships. So kind of break down, like, what esports and what you do in that capacity. So
my job entails is no different than a director of athletics at a – college or high school. So I'm like the director of athletics. So I'm the director of esports. So I manage just like I would if I was athletic director, football, baseball, basketball. I manage games like Madden, 2K, Fortnite, Call of Duty, Valorant, League of Legends. And so I manage it. And then with it being a new program, I coach it as well. So I'm one of the head coaches for some of the FPSs like Call of Duty, like Valorant, like in the sports games like Madden, FIFA, and NBA 2K. And so those are games I have experience in. I played them a lot as a kid growing up, played them a lot as a grown-up. Yes. We did here.
Players Lounge.
Exactly. And so and then for the games I don't know, I do my research, I do my homework, I play the game. And then for the college level, I can ask students to be team managers, which are coaches, which basically is a coach for that team. And that gives me a time, a little bit of help. So I make sure practices get done and make sure they're no different. Practices are no different than ours. We have a warm up. We go on technique. Then we work team stuff. Then we talk about strategy. Then we get ready for the next opponent. And so it's the same. That's the part where the transition for me was seamless because playing football, baseball, basketball growing up, and then obviously getting this level at the pro level, I knew what that process is. We got off season, take a break, but then you got time where you kind of ramp things up, kind of like a mini camp, do a tournament here and there. and then we have training camp. We have two-a-days. And I remember when I was at Lakeland, my first year there, and I said two-a-days to some of the players that were going to be part of my Call of Duty teams and some other teams, League of Legends. They was like, wait a minute, you mean like football? I said, yeah, like football that there's two-a-day, but it's obviously not going to be football. It's going to be basically we're going to have a practice in the morning of Valorant, of League of Legends, whatever game you're playing. We'll practice for 2-3 hours, go through the mechanics, go through the strategy and how we would play against a team with these type of players. And then, boom, practice is done. And then we'll take a break, eat lunch, hang out, then come back later in the afternoon, do the same thing. And we'll do that for 2 weeks. And they're like, oh, and I'm like, yeah, we're not hitting, we're not tackling, we're not in the weight room.
They thought you were going to take them on the field.
Yeah, they was like thinking football. Like, wait a minute, coach,
drill.
you said two-a-days because your background is football. I said, no, two-a-days. I'm taking that concept and bringing it into into esports, and it works.
Right.
Because for the guys that I know that are pro players, I know pro Madden players, I know pro Call of Duty players, I know pro Halo players. When they're on the team, they have a house where they go and sequester themselves. They'll get a house or rent a house, and they'll be there a month before the tournament that they're going to get ready for. Mm-hmm. And they're hanging out every day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. They're waking up, 24 hours a day next to their teammate because they're bunking rooms. So it's the same concept, but you'll just be coming from your dorm rooms, on campus.
They're about to be mad at me because this being the OG podcast, we're all, supposed to talk more football, gridiron. I have so many questions and comments because for you it's every day, but this is fascinating to me. Yeah. And I'm going to let you know. I'm going to be transparent and confess to you. When I first heard about scholarships for EA Sports, for esports, I'm sorry, for esports.
Yes.
When I first heard about it, I didn't know how I felt about it. Mm-hmm. I didn't know. I was like, hold on. These young men and women are getting part of their scholarship paid for, their tuition paid for playing video games.
Correct.
And I'm sure some people had that same thought back in the 1800s when football players were getting scholarships.
Exactly. And I tell people that I mention that like that, just the way you describe it to people.
But explain to me, because when I think football scholarship, when I think basketball, I think about what it does for the school. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know what type of academic prowess Alabama has, but when you hear Alabama, you're like, oh, Crimson Tide. Correct. And it's because of their sports program, whether we want to believe it or not. Yep. UCLA, because of their sports program. But what does esports, not EA, what does esports do for a university?
So it brings in another demographic of student. And it raises the percentage of students that are going to be more into IT, video game coding, and cybersecurity. So working for the government, and even actually cybersecurity mixed in with drone controlling, because with the gamer, if you pick up a drone controller, you're picking up a video game controller, and we already know about where drones go, or what industry or what area uses them. That's military, and then there's a professional league of it, but there's also, like I said, there's military. And then I know several doctors that says the tools to do some of the now robotics that's in medical field to do surgeries is the same controls that. Again, if you're holding an Xbox controller or a PlayStation controller, it's the same idea behind it. So they look for individuals that have a background in gaming and understand it. So they then can hire them and give him the education to then know, okay, this is surgery for this type of removal of a kidney or whatever. Mm-hmm. But it's all stemming back to those skills you get from playing video games, from knowing the technical side of things and understanding that you got to obviously, one, be patient to take your time to learn things.
Speaking with Ahman Green, who's now what's the official title? Is it AD of esports?
I'll say director of esports.
Director of esports for Nebraska.
For the University of Nebraska.
For the University of Nebraska, obviously a phenomenal football player in the NFL. You played a position which I consider the most violent position in the NFL, the running back position. I don't know if you've heard described, but you're the one guy where as soon as you touch the ball, you have 11 headhunters, coming after you. Oh yeah,
I knew this since I was 5, 5 or 6.
So you know how violent it is. The average career in the NFL is 3.5 years. I have to believe it's shorter for a running back. You played over a decade?
Yep, a decade in the NFL. And that's a decade and 1+ year in the UFL.
So I actually had a question about that, but just talk. how'd you last so long? I knew when you played because I knew about you before we met and before we became teammates, how you took care of your body and your nutrition. But just talk about like how you lasted over a decade playing the most violent position.
So I grew up watching film. My brothers basically set me down and said, "Watch this guy," and that guy was Walter Payton. So obviously the way he ran, but then I got to tape Pure Payton, and it showed his off-season conditioning, running hills back home, Mississippi, when he was at Jackson State. But then when he got to the NFL, obviously he's in Illinois now, so he had to find another hill. So he found the hill, start running that. And so in Green Bay, in Lincoln, I would run stadium stairs. Seattle, too, I would try to find hills, couldn't find them. If not, I'm running wind sprints. And then all the other running back, abilities we need, quick feet, so doing quick foot drills, so stuff like that. And I did it a lot. I wanted to do it with my teammates, but I just ended up, I couldn't either. One, I was quiet. I didn't talk a whole lot. So I was like, I just go do it by myself and get it done. And I said for the biggest thing, I wish I probably would have did it more with my teammates because I would have had more fun and we would have basically grew together. But that was my off-season conditioning, finding a spot, either going home to Nebraska or staying in Wisconsin and running hills, stretching a lot. That's when I say probably 2002, 2001 is when I got into yoga and Pilates. And by the time I got here, I was still doing that at Pilates machine. Exact with my health, or with my nutrition, how I ate. It was something that, during that time we could as professional football athletes, a contact sport, we could eat a lot of meat. We had to, because that animal protein helped us regenerate a lot faster, and we get healed up faster. And then so that's where size and that's where strength come in. So I had that down to, it was my job. Like I knew my weight, my prime weight of what I needed to be to be effective. So I knew I had to be between 218 and 220. Anything a little bit, 225, 228, that's where I knew I was getting too heavy, which I think I got a little bit here because of the injuries. But, outside of that, I usually stayed in that range because then I knew where I was going to be a problem for a defense trying to stop me. And then obviously I could last the whole season physically too, because like you mentioned, the contact we get because it's so physical of a position.
You're still very fit, but obviously you're not playing on Sunday. So it's obvious that you take it serious, but how have you adjusted it in your retirement?
So the biggest thing I've adjusted from a workout regimen, nutrition, everything's adjusted. So nutrition, one, obviously I'm pretty much close to vegan as possible. I save my cheat, I call them cheat days for like birthdays and holiday weekends, stuff like that, where I'll eat some ribs or I'll eat some burger or steak. But my wife and one of my daughters, they're 100% vegan.
Interesting.
So I'm there morning, like tonight, this morning, all I've eaten today is I had a big bowl of fruit, watermelon, strawberries, and red grapes.
That's all you've
had? That's all I've eaten. And then when I get home, I'm going to have a late lunch, eat a salad or something, and then something for dinner too. That's going to be more, veggie or pasta in there to kind of fill me up a little bit. But yeah, it's been something like, and it sounds crazy, but it works. And I'm learning how to sustain, me and my wife. We're learning different recipes. We're learning how to make sure, we eating the right stuff and making sure our bodies are not just craving stuff at the end of the day. And then the weight room side, like I tried about 2 months ago, retried to go back into putting a bar on my back, doing squats. And it wasn't really heavy, right? I think it was like it was just one plate on. It was 140, whatever that was. 135 on there. And I did the set of reps, and the workout was done. And then when I woke up Tuesday morning, my body was like, "Hey man, what's your problem?" And my low back is talking to me. So I was like, you know what? It's June now, so that was like April. And I was like, nope, no more. So all dumbbell, kettlebell, body weight, and a lot of yoga. What's going on right now. So that's the adjustments in nutrition and for my body that I've been doing now.
I was laughing and I was trying not to cut you off when you said that about the squats, because not too long ago I was trying to show my 15-year-old the correct way to squat, and we only had 135.
Yeah.
So I'm talking him through it, and that was the first time in maybe a decade I put a bar on my back for squats. And then the next day, I was hurting so bad, and I was like, it can't be from the squats. So I was like, I don't know what happened, but it was the squats.
Yeah.
Like something about squats, if you haven't done them in a long time, even 135 pounds will have your body feeling it.
That was the same way I felt, because you think about it, your vertebrae is compressing down, and you're already, and at your age and all that and the stuff we've been doing, and, a decade off for you, but me probably a year off from the time I had it on my back, but I'm like, nah, I'm good. If I do put a bar on my back, I'll have no weight on it, just to beat a 40-pound or 45-pound bar, to go through a movement to, like you say, show technique to somebody. That's about it.
I'd be remiss not to talk about your career because it was one of the greats when you talk about NFL and you talk about running backs. Kind of talk about what were some of the more special seasons or even games when you sit back and you're cooking up a vegan meal and you're just reminiscing, like, what are some of the games that just pop in your head?
Oh, man, I would say my first season as my rookie year, just going through that season where it was an interesting year because it was all learning, obviously. It was learning. That first year in the league, your first year in the league was just learning. Yep. Learning how to be your position for you, DN, D tackle, myself running back, but then special teamer too. And that's something we all picked up. A lot of guys, I tell guys, I have nephews. I have a few nephews that was fortunate enough to play in the league. And I tell them right away, hey, I don't care what round you get drafted in, be ready to play special teams. Yes. And I played a little bit at Nebraska, so I understood the thing. But getting there, just knowing how to be a pro about it, learning, skills of breaking off tackles, getting off blocks to cover and make sure you break down and make the tackle. Just getting good at that, something I hadn't done since high school. Right. I was a middle linebacker in high school. That was the first time I had to – that time was the last time I had to break down and then come to balance and then make a tackle. But now I'm a pro running back, but I'm an R5, or L5 coming down. So that first year was a big learning experience for me. And then the trade happened in Green Bay, where by that time where I did have some play time on offense, but I was just in my head, I was like, I just want to show people I could play running back because I didn't have enough. In my head, I wasn't satisfied with the time that I got in Seattle because Ricky Waters, he came in, he was the guy, he was the free agent guy. So as a business, he had to get the lion's share of carries. I understood that, but I was like, man, I know if I get an opportunity, I'm going to do some things with that ball in my hand. I know it. Just give me a chance. And then Mike Sherman, who was my coach in Seattle, he was our tight ends coach, our offensive coordinator. He gets the head job in Green Bay, brings me over. And then, again, I'm in the position just waiting, but I'm now a little bit up. I'm a backup to Dorsey Levens. Okay. One of my good friends now after football, and he taught me a lot. That's who got me really, going, I say, on a professional side of how to take care of my body. Talking about it every day at the cafeteria. But then, he gets injured mid-season. And in my head for a long time, just being old school and a pro, to me, I didn't beat him out because he got hurt. Right. So I was never the starter until he came back. Right. Until then Mike Sherman superseded him saying, hey, Ahman Green is now the starter. So until that moment, in every interview I mentioned, I'm just the backup. Dorsey's just healing up. He has an MCL. He'll be back here soon.
Did he appreciate that? Did he?
I don't know.
What words ever?
I know one thing. Today we do a podcast. That's one of the podcasts I do with him. Okay. It's him and Gilbert Brown. So I could tell through his always reaching out, even after football. He's like, I'm like a little brother to him. Okay. He's one of my other big brothers out there. So I would feel, because I think he took notice of that. Yeah. And I always had a ton of respect for him playing. So I watched him. So I remember growing up watching him at Georgia Tech and Notre Dame, playing football. So, and watching him as a Packer, I was watching him at Nebraska when they beat the Patriots. And I'm like, man, he's big, he's fast, he could catch. Right. So it was something. I told him that when I got there. I said, man, I used to watch you in college. I was like, I was impressed on your size and able to run and catch the ball out the backfield like you did. And then he's like, we would just talk about things, bounce things off of me. So I say that first year in Green Bay, again, learning experience. And then obviously the 2003 season for myself and the Packers offense. We set records team-wise and league-wide with that season. And it was a season where I was in the zone the whole year. As we talk about athletes, you get in the zone, and it was for 16 games. Even though in the losses, because I was always focused on our main goal was to win a division, NFC North, get to the playoffs, and then go to the Super Bowl. And so even in a loss, I took out the mistakes made or whatever I need to do to get better from that loss. I never looked at it as, oh man, I suck or we suck. It's a learning experience. Every loss, every win is a learning experience. And so that year was one of those special years that I'm like, man, if that was our year, it's going to be that year. But we just came a couple plays short. Actually, you were in Philly. Were you in Philly that year? Yeah. So a couple of plays short against y'all.
Was that 4th and 20?
26.
Yeah,
4th and 26. Freddie Mitchell caught the ball. I was just like, Dude.
And then Brett Favre, for those that don't know, and if you can hear my stupid watch in the background, I have no idea why he keeps talking, so forgive me. But 4th and 26, if you say that in Philadelphia, and probably Green Bay, they know exactly what it is.
Yeah, like Philly fans are happy. Green Bay fans aren't.
But here in Houston, so I don't know what round of the playoffs, but
it was the game before the NFC Championship game.
Yeah, the game before the NFC Championship game in Philadelphia.
It was divisional, so it was a divisional game.
Green Bay's basically y'all are beating us the entire game. I mean, they're just beating us the entire game, and was it in overtime or to go into?
It was to go into overtime. It basically was the end of the game.
I should know that. Yeah,
it was the end of the game, and we had I think we were either tied or we were down, but we had the control of the ball, and we got it to where we could have kicked the field goal.
Yes,
and we didn't.
Right.
And we punted. And when Coach kicked, when he chose to punt go, that was the only time I was irate on the sidelines for my pro career. Actually, the second time. There was one game where I had that earlier that season against the Chiefs. We lost in overtime, and I threw my helmet because it was part of me. It was my fault.
Okay.
I called it. I say it was my fault because I had a fumble, but it was other mistakes.
Got you.
But mine was. I look at that one. So later on that season, that time when he called that punt team to go out there, I was like. I mean, I just remember going off. I was like, I felt bad, but I was like, I was justified to a point because we were running the ball. I could have picked up a yard to get a first down, and then
y'all were gashing us,
and we could just run the clock out.
Yeah,
one of those situations. But we give it back to y'all, and at that time, playoff football, you can't give it back to the other team. Sometimes you got to control it and keep it away out of their hands. But we unfortunate, found out about that.
And then your defense was doing very well because they got to the situation where Philadelphia was in 4th and 26.
Yes.
And then Donovan McNabb hits Freddie Mitchell for 27 yards, and the rest is history. But in that game as well, Brett Favre there was one play I'll never forget because I was playing and we were rushing him, and he just threw the ball up.
Yeah.
And y'all still had a chance to actually win, but it was almost like he just threw a Hail Mary. Brian Dawkins intercepts it. And during the play, I look at Hollis Thomas, our D tackle, and we're on the field, playing. And like we look and we kind of give each other that look like, did this just happen? Like, why did he throw that ball?
He could just took the sack or throw it out of bounds. Yeah, I know you're talking about. Hey, I was in on that play.
Yes.
And it was interesting, that play. For me, that play has a story behind it because during the week, that was a play-action counter play for us.
Okay.
So it was a counter play, which was very good. It was a play-action out of that. And on the fake, so during practice, we did that exact blitz.
Okay.
We did a backside safety blitz. I picked up the safety on my play-action. I saw my play-action fake. I kind of aborted it. I did a half fake and went and picked him up.
Got it.
In practice. Watching film, Mike Sherman says, Ahman, I don't want you to go get him. I want you to just play out your fake. Because we run it so much. In his head, he's like, we run the ball so well and so much. This play, he's going to stick with you.
Okay.
And I'm like, Coach, but that's a free runner. But he's like, no, I'm on just stick with it. And I'm like, okay.
Okay.
And so rewind. Now fast forward to that play, and just as I was about to branch off to pick him up or at least get in his way,
right,
it just clicked in my head. Then I just stuck with my fake, and I'm like. And, of course, so for me, I'm thinking about that play for at least a week. Because I'm like, if I just chip him, I slow him up, and I don't know if Brett doesn't not throw the ball the same way, but at least it gives him more time to get his feet set to throw it out of bounds or something.
You know what's funny? On that play, it was a zone blitz. So we had the backside DB blitz, and I dropped in coverage to cover the area that he was coming from. Obviously, I'm not going to do anything, but 280 pound deep, but I dropped in cover just to be there.
And it's what defenses do.
Right. And when Brett threw the ball, I just remember just standing and just looking at it like, why did he do that? Why didn't he take
And that was Brett. That was Brett. I love him to death.
Oh,
he was my teammate, but we knew that every now and then we get we get some play where he and Mike Sherman, and I remember stories of Dorsey telling me, Antonio Freeman telling me that when Mike Homer was there, they used to just go back and forth because Brett would do things and be like, "Why are you doing it? I told you to do it."
Yes, yeah. You take the good with the bad.
Yeah, exactly.
With a guy.
Exactly.
This is why they always say the NFL is less than 6 degrees of separation because you brought up Ricky Waters. when I was a rookie in Philadelphia, Ricky Waters was the running back. And I remember just being in awe because, I had a chance to watch him when
he just came from the 49ers.
Yes, a big, and he's a big back.
He's
also.
I just saw him at Super Bowl in Vegas, and still looked like he stay in shape. He's still a big guy, and saw his wife and his son or his kids. They were there too, so it was good seeing him.
And Dorsey's another. I played with him as well in Philly because Dorsey ended his career in Philly.
Yeah, he talked about Philly a lot on our podcast.
Back. So you had those big backs, and funny thing about Dorsey, because obviously you're in great shape. Isn't he like a trainer, a cycle?
Yeah, he does cycling.
Yeah, cycling, indoor cycling.
Yep, he does the kind of like the was this Peloton is the famous name now that people know what you're talking about. I'll say that he does his own version of that, and I did it with him. Like when it was during COVID, we were texting each other because we had just saw each other during the season at a few games in 2019. Then next year in the off season, and I'm like, Dorsey, what are you doing? With COVID. He said, I'm just doing. Let's just set up I set up a Zoom. I'll send in a Zoom link, and then we could do this once a week, and we'd do it. We'll ride the bike through Zoom for about hour to hour and a half.
Wow!
And he's getting it. He had people from all over Atlanta, and then people. I think his sister would jump on too. So not just former players, but people he just knew. I call him the mayor of Atlanta because he's been there so long. So people that he knew in Atlanta on that Zoom ride. So that's something I'm always trying to get back on with him.
That's awesome. All right, so you moved to Houston. Houston, H-Town is home. Obviously, you played here. Looking at the current team, just some of your thoughts. C.J. Stroud, what D'Amico's doing, it's exciting in H-Town right
now. Man, when I saw Miko come here, I was super excited because of where he's been as a player. And then as a coach, traveling with Kyle, who was also here with us, and him and his experience, LaFleur's in Green Bay, and Kyle, and they're all, I say, disciples or students of McVay. That was with the Rams. And then once I knew D'Amico got here, I'm like, it's going to be something special. I don't know. I said, I don't know when it's going to happen, what year it's going to be. I said, it might be right away. It might be at least 2 years. I said this organization, this program is going to change because now we got a football player that understands the game, was a student of the game, was defensive rookie of the year before I got here.
You're right.
And then I'm like, this is going to be fun, interesting to watch. And then boom, right away you get CJ in here, and then you get all the weapons, you get the receivers that they have, the run game, the defense. Getting Willie Anderson Jr. Seeing that draft pick go down on the defensive side, then I was like, okay. So he's piecing this thing together right away, what I saw, and knowing, like, we know the game. Right. I'm like, all right, you got an offensive weapon in Stroud and whatever receivers you put around him, because if you saw him at Ohio State, if you don't mess with him and you make him better by helping him to adjust to the speed of this game and then helping him understand defensive coverages, what defensive coordinators are trying to do to him and what defensive players are trying to do to him. If you get him to understand that, I say C.J. Stroud he's gonna be a vital part of this offense. Right. Then you mix it in with the run game with Pierce, the way he runs, real little guy with a big stick. He runs hard. He's not a big guy, but he runs hard. And then obviously once I saw the Willie Anderson pickup, and then you start filling in spots through either free agency and all that, I'm like, this is a team that's gonna push it, and they did year one, and then last year too was like, it's just continue to ramp it up. I mean, they got second divisional playoff this year and lost to Baltimore. And I think that was it. It was either, I think it was first or I think it was second. They won the first round playoff.
Yeah, they won a playoff.
They won a playoff game and then went to Baltimore.
Yes, that's correct.
Yep.
That's right.
And so
Lamar Jackson.
They had Lamar, but good team there. And it's hard to beat them. So, but I know that game though is like any other game for a young talented team and a young coach to say, hey, this is what we can learn from this, and then we're gonna take it to the next level. AFC Championship game, and then, hopefully then Super Bowl. But at least we know how far we could go with the talent we have now, and not many losses in free agency or guys retiring or anything this past season, so which is good. So which is very rare in the NFL offense roster where you have probably like 80% of the same people coming back for this team. And what they're doing, again, free agency and just talent-wise, developing their pool of talent that's here, I think that's number one what you do as an NFL staff. Instead of looking out draft pick wise and free agency wise. You talked about the free agents, similar to when Rick Smith brought you in, an accomplished back. The Texans, they brought in Joe Mixon, an accomplished back, out of Cincinnati. Just your thoughts on Joe Mixon. What type of running back do you see when you see him? I've been liking Joe since he came out of Oklahoma. Physical, Has a little attitude about him. Yeah. You know, he does a little bit more after the ball. You know, after he gets tackled than I did
right.
in terms of talking trash. So he's a little bit more than that. But the talent is there. That's just part of his game. And so bringing Mixon down here, being that he had those years with Burrow and up in Cincinnati, and I think it was Zach, the head coach. Those teams that made it to the playoffs, that made it to the Super Bowl, like he has that experience. And he could bring that. I'm pretty sure he could bring and talk about that to the younger running backs and then other guys on the team. You know, how that team, Bengals, they were either start the season real rough but finish strong, every year, no matter what. And him having that experience is going to just be kind of like myself to Dorsey, talking to him, getting that, like he'll talk about Super Bowl. He will talk about NFC Championship games that they've been to and what they had to do and work ethic and working on, how to block certain running backs or know what the defense likes to run against us. I know Dorsey, one thing he tells me about all the time is the fact that Mr. Andy Reid, obviously who has several Super Bowls now, he was the one coach on the staff for the 98 or 97 game or 98 game against the Broncos that wanted to keep running the ball, to just drain the clock out, do what Packers did at that time, play action pass and run the ball. And so that was something that he always sticks to, because he know that was one of his coaches. He was a player, everybody liked Andy.
Yes.
Everybody loved Andy now. And you in Philly with him.
Yes.
You know that too. So just having that knowledge, that expertise of knowing, like when something works, hey, it ain't broken. Don't try to fix it. So just having that mindset, for players coming in, Mixon can bring that into the fray, even, help out even with some of the coaches on the coaching staff as well, that expertise.
You brought up Dameon Pierce and how much you love his game. For him to go through a rookie year where it looked like he arrived to a year where he was a little bit down, what would you tell him for this third year? What would be some of the things you would tell him as far as advice?
Oh, easy. It would be like that second year was all a learning experience, just like the first year was. And then, pick out the best parts and the worst parts and examine them. Why did this happen? If it was a fumble, if it was, not catching the ball well or missing coverage and stuff. Like what are you doing pre-snap? And then go through that stuff, on your own. And then ask your coaches too, or ask your teammates. I said, ask the coaches first, because they'll give you expert opinion, obviously knowledge there, but then also your teammates can see you, they're a person watching you play, and they could tell you different things they saw, why you reacted different or something that you could have did better, and then take that as this information to get better. And then do that, because that's something I did. I did a self-analysis after every season I played. And from, like I mentioned, the physical side, my weight, but then mentally, I would look at the plays. I would have Edgar Bennett. He was my coach then. I said, Edgar, make me up a tape of all my plays. And in the offseason, once the offseason hit, I'll just sit back and watch every game and look at all my good plays to the bad plays, good reads, bad reads, and then take notes on it. And then obviously chart them away and then go to them every now and then during the regular season or during mini camps or OTA, stuff like that, to just see what I could do better. And that's how by the end of my career, I was able to dissect defenses pre-snap just like a quarterback. Right. Talking to my old line, I said one big thing that when I was in Green Bay, Edgar did it. Edgar Bennett came in. He started us having meetings with the linemen. So it's just like the line. I think the linebackers meet with y'all anyway.
Right.
So I'm like, why running backs don't? So then when it hit me, that it just opened up a whole new world, and that was the 2003 season.
Yeah.
And so then I started knowing the shift and adjustments pre-snap of what the linemen are going to already say amongst each other while they're down in a 3-point or 2-point stance.
Right.
They're touching each other's hands. They're saying their words, and so I know those words. I knew those words in 2003, so I already could see a defensive front. I said, I know what's about to get shifted over. This guy's going to say, tap him. And I already knew. So I knew either get out or I'm going to stay in and block if it's a pass, or I knew, okay, this run play is about to get audible and we're going to go this way. Right. And so I knew that pre-snap. So that was this stuff that helped my game get better. And I say probably every pro that's played longer than 6 years, you get to that level because eventually – because your physical's slowing down. Right. You're not fast anymore, right? So you got to think a little bit more, and I think that's something for any player on this roster being at the ages they are, with Mixon coming in a little older, he can bring that element, to him and any other player on that roster.
See, when you were breaking down how you evaluated yourself after the season, in my mind, I was thinking that's a pro's pro. That's why he lasted as long as he did. Now that you're the director of esports, is there something that a gamer can do where it's not just playing games? Like, can they go back and review their games
all the time? Okay. And the funny thing is, I get pushback too. It's really interesting how some of the esports players, much respect to them, they are like, they could find out in a game that they're top 500 in the world. But I say, yeah, you're the top 500 in the world, but your shooting is off. It's kind of like a quarterback. Like, he's probably the best quarterback in the league, but your accuracy is not good. That's what I'm telling him. And so, but I'm not telling him to put him, like, that's the part he has to understand. Like, at the first time I told one of my players this, I'm like, I'm not telling you this to tell you that you're a bad player. No, this is what you got to do to get better. Right. You're top 500. That means you could be top 250 if you work on your accuracy a little bit. Then eventually you could be top 100. Then eventually you top 50 and then top 10. That's where you want to be the best player. But so you got a long ways to go, but you got to just be able to take the information. It's not, I'm not criticizing you to put you down. I'm criticizing you to make you better.
You're coaching.
Yeah, I'm coaching. Yeah. And I said, so that's the one difference between esports and traditional sports athletes. Esports athletes don't have that governor to get them to slow down when they hear that criticism.
Right.
We learned that at age 5, 6 years old when we started playing. When coaches start coaching, he's coaching us to get us better. He or she is coaching us to get it better. For esports players, what is it? What happens with an esport? A kid that plays video game, right? They get a system. It's a gift, and then they go to a room by themselves and play by themselves. There's no coach sitting them. Unless there is a big brother, father, or mother that play video games in the house. They'll sit there and play with them and teach them, hey, don't get mad. If you lost this game, you're gonna lose a lot before you win. So old school gamers didn't have nobody sitting over their shoulder. Me playing football, I had my 2 older brothers and my dad who played offensive line teaching me football. But when I got my Nintendo and playing Super Mario Brothers, I did have my dad with me sitting there playing, but he was playing for fun, but also sitting there. Of course, I'm not going to react certain ways when he's sitting there, but I'm by myself. Right. Yeah. I'm by myself. It's a whole different world. Right. And so that's where gamers have to learn that part. When the coach says something to them, they're not telling them they're a bad player. Right. They actually tell them, I need you to do this better because then you become a better player. So that's been my whole process, especially being at Nebraska, teaching the players that you're top 100 right now at Tank and Overwatch 2, but I'm in my head, I'm saying, why not be top 100? Right. But you got to do this, this, and this. And you don't just do it one time. You do it every day, consistently, every day.
They're probably like, Coach, there's 1 billion people in the world, and I'm top 500. But like you said, you could be top 250 or the top. There's so many. We don't even have time.
Right.
One, I have to listen to your podcast, and I hope you talk more about it on your podcast. Let the listeners know how they can hear the podcast.
So the podcast is Ahman Green's Gamers Lounge. It's on all the places you download your podcast at. And then a couple that I do during the football season is Green and Go G Lounge with myself and Dorsey Levens and Gilbert Brown. And then hopefully I could get back on track with one of my old line buddies, Mike Wall. Yeah. It's called On My Block. And we started that one probably like right before COVID. So hopefully I could get back with him because now I'm teaching. My teaching schedule had me off. I'm like, dang it. Because I love that one because, it's O-line running back. Right. And we're talking X's and O's. And that's where Mike is. Me and Gilbert and Dorsey, we talk more just like what we see on the field, in terms of as a pro. We got a defensive lineman in Gilbert Brown. We got another running back in terms of Dorsey and Gilbert feels. Actually, he feels outnumbered. You might need to come on the show.
I'll come for
he
the
feels
grave
outnumbered.
I love the grave digger. Yeah. I'll come help him out.
Yeah, he feels outnumbered because it's 2 running backs, right. And we always talking offense. So, but yeah, those are the 2 podcasts I do, or 3 podcasts that I do, and you can find them on anywhere you download your podcast. And my Gamers Lounge, I do this year round. It's every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Central Standard Time, wherever you download your podcast.
I'm legit, because I'm so interested in that, on my way back to Missouri City from the stadium, I'm going to be listening to that one because I think that's fascinating. And I just remember my reaction when I first read an article about esports and scholarships. Yep. It was a negative one, but the more, like I've talked to Dalton Schultz. I don't know if you've
the tight end.
He's a huge gamer.
Oh, so I got to get his digits.
You have to.
I got to have him on the podcast.
He sat in that chair that you're sitting in, and I just wanted to learn more about what he does. But Vandermeer said, if you don't talk football, I'm going to beat you up. So I had to adjust the conversation, but it was very interesting. You're going to love talking to him.
Yeah, one of my goals coming here today was talking to Candace to get the list of gamers on the squad. Okay, so I know Dalton is one. Okay.
He even learned how to code at Stanford. So
well, there you go.
You got to get on that.
Yeah,
All right, that's the voice of Ahman Green joining us here, OG Podcast. He's back in H-Town, so you're going to see a lot of him here around the stadium and around the city. Welcome back to Houston.
Thank you, Indy.
And thanks for coming on the show, brother.
Appreciate it.